Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Passionate Professional series. My name is Tunde Kukoyi, and I'm the host of tonight's episode. The Passionate Professional series is an offshoot of the Passion and Purpose of, which is a channel on YouTube that shares useful knowledge to help you maximize your passions and your purpose. So you do not just enjoy success, but also fulfillment in your professional lives. Our guest for today is already in the studio and she's ready to add value to us. Her name is Merrisha Gordon, and this is episode 29 of the Passionate Professional series. I want to start by saying a big thank you to those of you that either joined us live or watched the replay over the last 29 episodes. You guys are the real MVPs. You definitely make this journey worth it. And if you ask me, why do I do this? Why do I keep doing the Passionate Professional series? It's because I've realized that, just like Steve Jobs said, that people with passion can actually change the world for the better. And until you tap into your passions, until you tap into your purpose, it's very likely that you are not bringing the best that you can bring to the world. And the reason I do this is to bring you to closer to people that are living their lives with passion and making a difference in the world, to help you see that if these people can do it, then I can do it also. Always remember that this is an interactive session. Always remember to pop your questions in the chat box, and we'll be sure to put your questions on the screen so that we can address your questions. Even if you're watching the replay and you have a question, you can still ask the question, and I'm sure that our guests will find time to answer your question. So before I bring our guest for today up to the stage, to the virtual stage, as is the tradition, I'm going to start by asking us a question for the month, a question that is probably related to our professional lives. And the question for today goes thus. So the question for today is this: how resilient are you? How resilient are you? You might start by asking that, what is resilience? And there's a lot of complicated definitions for resilience. I think even the American Psychological Association has a three-line definition for it, but this is probably the definition I like the best. It says that it's the ability to cope with and to recover from setbacks. The ability to cope with, not just coping, and also recovering from setbacks. And then you might ask me that, well, how is this important to me as a professional? That's because as long as you are living on this planet Earth, as long as you are living on this Earth, you're all going to experience setbacks. That's something that is inevitable for all of us. And now the setbacks might be things in the form of things like macro trauma or micro trauma. What do I mean by macro trauma? Like big life events, or maybe it's a loss of the loved one, or a divorce, or it's financial issues, you go bankrupt, you lose a house or something like that, or it's just natural disasters. We all went through macro trauma during the time of COVID. Those are macro traumas, but even leaving out the macro traumas, there are also micro traumas. Things like when people are passing unkind comments about you, or you're facing unfair criticisms, or you have to deal with aggressive people. Even things like just dealing with people that are aggressive in traffic. Those are micro traumas, and if we're not resilient, it's very likely that all these things might weigh us down and stop us from reaching our potential. So resilience is one key factor that we all need to have, that helps us to go through the tough and challenging times, which I can tell you would all face. Someone once said that everyone is either going through a crisis, coming out of a crisis, or heading towards a crisis. So be kind to everyone. So resilience is one key factor that we all need to have. And there's different types of resilience. There's the physical resilience, there's the mental resilience. Physical just means the ability to come back from illnesses, injury, and things like that. Mental resilience is the ability to adapt to change. And then emotional resilience is the ability to actually control your emotions and your mind when you're undergoing negative experiences. And social resilience is also another type of resilience. That's the ability of groups to recover from difficult situations. So how can you become more resilient? Reframe negative thoughts. When people are passing negative thoughts towards you, or when you have negative thoughts yourself, you need to look at it from another perspective. Stop building up negative thoughts in your head. Stop being too harsh on yourself. Be compassionate to yourself. Another thing you can do is focus on what's within your control. Sometimes we try to control things that we can't control, and that's why I like the serenity prayer that says, we should be thankful for the ones that we can control, and things that are outside of us, we should just learn to accept them. And then you also need to seek support. Seeking support means talking to people that have gone through similar circumstances, seeking support from your family members. You don't have to go through everything alone. And sometimes you might need to seek professional help from psychologists, from coaches. Sometimes it helps you to become more resilient. And then also learn to deal with stress. If you're undergoing stress in your body, you're undergoing stress at your workplace, you're not sleeping well, it's not likely that you'll be very resilient. So dealing with and coping with stress even before the adverse events come is a way that you can learn to be more resilient. Find a pattern of for how you learn to relax and calm your body and your nerves, and we'll talk about that during today's episode. So with that, I can see that there are already 5 people watching us live. I'm going to get to introduce our guest for today. This is a quote from Confucius that says that our greatest glory is not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. So we are all going to fall at different points in our lives, but it's in rising every time we fall. That is how we demonstrate resilience. And I hope we all get to rise when we fall. So our guest for today is Merrisha Gordon, and she's a trailblazing leadership coach and organizational consultant. She's the founder of MG Coaching and Consultancy Ltd, which is an organization that is dedicated to empowering leaders across the public and third sectors. With a strong mission to help an organizations develop and retain top talent, Merrisha combines her extensive professional expertise with a deep personal passion for transformation. Her leadership journey began at the remarkable age of 23 when she stepped into management, eventually rising to a director level role in the NHS by 29. She was born and raised in inner city Birmingham as the eldest of three, and her experiences shaped her into a natural leader with a strong sense of purpose and guess what? Resilience. Beyond her professional achievements, Marisha is a devoted single mother to her adventurous 7-year-old, and together they embrace through travel and quality time in nature. As a coach, Merisha brings the same zest for life to her work, connecting deeply with clients to inspire meaningful growth. Her expertise and insights have been spotlighted in notable media outlets such as the Metro, Glamour Magazine, iNews, The Guardian, National World, and Elo Magazine. She has supported hundreds of leaders globally in refining their leadership skills, navigating challenges, and making lasting impacts within their organizations. Marisha is a powerful voice for change, and she's an inspiring advocate for personal and professional growth. So, ladies and gentlemen, join me with a virtual round of applause as I invite to the stage Merrisha Gordon. Hi, Merrisha. Are you there?
I am there. Thank you very much, Tunde. That was a lovely introduction. Good to be here.
Thank you. How's your day been so far?
My day has been full on, which is probably no different to any other parent. It starts with a 7-year-old in my bed at 6 o'clock in the morning, which, I could rather do without on a Sunday. We've had a lovely day. We've been out to the movies. If anyone's on the fence about Wicked, it was amazing. And the rest of the day is housework, is cooking, is ironing the uniform. So that's what my day's been about. How about you, Tunde?
Well, I think today has been not so bad, but the weekend has been really stressful. But I'm thankful for the weekend. Yeah, I went to church earlier, and then I started preparing for this, and then I caught up on about 40 minutes of sleep just about an hour ago. But yeah, I think I'm ready to go.
Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, you're most welcome. And thank you for honoring the invitation. And so I guess who are watching live as well, like I said at the start, thank you once again. And remember, it's an interactive session. It's not just a conversation between Marisha and myself. If you have any questions or if anything that Marisha says, or if I say, if it strikes you or you want to ask a question about it, be sure to pop in the comment section and then we'll address your questions as well. So just as a bit of introduction, I've read out Marisha's bio for all of us, but I always like it when our guests tell us not the formal bio, but just tell us a bit more about themselves. So, Marisha, can you tell us a bit more about yourself?
Yeah. So before I tell you what I do, I think it's important to understand the person behind the job title. So as you touched on, I grew up in inner city Birmingham. I'm the oldest of three girls, so from a young age was very much a leader in the household. I had quite a traditional pathway, did my GCSEs, went to college, went to university to study law and international studies. And then after university, moved on to London, where, we all think the streets are paved with gold. Interestingly, my journey moving to London was because I intended on joining the civil service. So along with my degree, I'd always done languages, and Russian was something I was really interested in. So I moved to London with the intention of working for the Home Office, but the first job that I got to get me into London was with the NHS. So I started the NHS age 22, started as an admin assistant at the time, and literally 14 months later found myself accidentally thrust into my first management role, and then stayed with the NHS for 23 years up until 2021. So that's a little bit about my journey. But in terms of who I am, as you touched on, I'm a mom, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister. I'm hoping my friends would say I'm a good friend. But I'm somebody that, is very much all about connecting people, relationships, and empowerment. And that for me has been, I suppose, one of the golden threads throughout my life. And as I was thinking about my early years, I remember even at school, I was always the person that very much connected with those on the periphery, those children in the class that nobody really spoke to. I was always that one that was very much concerned about other people. So that thread of empowerment has been there probably throughout my life.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure during the course of this conversation, we'll delve deeper into your accidental management role and how it shaped your life. And thanks for also going back to the background, how you started off from going to London, that the city paved with gold. I don't think it is nowadays, but yeah, it's good to hear that. I'm going to do a quick. I'm going to do a quick game, and that's like a nice. I used to do that at the end of the show before, but I'm trying to bring it at the beginning because I think it works well as an icebreaker rather than at the end. So I'm just going to ask you two random questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, looks. And then before we get into the serious conversation, so my first icebreaker question for you is this: what was your first job? We just said that. I'm going to change that. Wow, how random. Okay. What's your favorite restaurant? Mm,
What's my favorite restaurant? If we're talking about the type of cuisine, it will probably always be Caribbean. But
okay.
I also love Thai food. And that started many years ago when I went to Thailand. I remember doing cooking classes and just falling in love with the food. So it's always going to be Caribbean, I think, followed closely by Thai.
Nice. So one more question. The next random question is no, why is it coming to what is the first job? Sorry, it keeps bringing that. What's your favorite time of the day?
My favorite time of the day is probably the morning. And I say this because that's the time when the house is still, the world is quiet. And for many years, I've had quite a strict morning routine. So
Mm,
I tend to get up between 5:15 and 5:30. And that's intentional before my daughter gets up and it all gets quite chaotic. And I spend time meditating, I spend time journaling, quite often do a bit of EFT, so emotional freedom technique, tapping, and just like to sit with myself in the mornings. And I know that sets me up for success for the day. And this is a habit that, I've dipped in and out of over the years, but I definitely applied it religiously with the pandemic. And from that point, I have absolutely kept this up. And so this is what builds me up for success for the day. So it's got to be the mornings when the world is still, you know, you can't hear a peep, and that's the perfect time of day for me.
I think I share that with you, and I kind of agree that morning is the best time of the day. If it kind of gives you like that, if I put in quotes, unfair advantage, like when everyone is waking up, you've already like done the hard work, you've already conquered the day. Someone says rise before the sun and conquer the day before everyone else. So I believe I'm also a morning person. There are people that are night owls, but for me, I'm a morning person as well. So yeah, on that one, I stand with you. Yeah, and on that point, I also mentioned before the kids wake up, I think then you have your own time and space to sort yourself
Yeah,
out.
absolutely. And, you know, if anyone's got kids that they've young kids that they've got to get out the door to school, you will know it is just chaos, isn't it? And between the breakfast, getting somebody dressed, and my daughter's at an age at the moment where I'm having to shout at her when I discover she's either trying to get away with glitter on her eyes or lip gloss on her lips. So the mornings are chaotic. So I really just have to have that slow easy in the morning.
Oh, nice. Okay, so everyone watching or listening, now you know who Merrisha Gordon is. So let's delve in and ask some more questions. Next question that I'll typically ask Marisha is, what are your values? So our readers, listeners can connect with you. What are your values?
Okay. So that's a really good question. And that's a question that I would ask my clients, because for me, your values are the compass that really drive you forwards in life. So when I think about what drives me forward and what's important, sounds cliche, but for me, it's kindness, you know, and it always has been. It doesn't cost much to be kind to anybody and everybody. It's kindness, it's freedom, it's equity. You know, it's understanding that people need support to move forwards. Um, and I've got a real sense of adventure. For me, it's knowing that when I get to the end of my days, you know, I haven't wasted my time, haven't wasted my life. So I like to really focus on adventure and making memories. These are the things that spur me on in life. And that really seeps into how I choose my work, how I run my business, but it also seeps into, you know, how I parent. And so for me, it's all about kindness and simplicity and freedom, but it's about making memories and just making a difference in this world.
Wow, I love not I don't just love your values, but I also like how you express them. It just feels like, oh, can you give me your values, please? I want your values. I'll stick to my values. I'll stick to my values. But I also like how you said it, like our values are compasses that drive us forward in life. And that, I mean, and that's very key because for many people that have not sat down to either ask themselves, what are my values, or to craft out what my values are, it means that because we, as we all know, it's just like we're all sailing through life. And then if the waves just drive you this way, you go this way. If it drives you that way, you go that way. And if you don't have values, you don't have that compass that always leads you to your true north. So you need to actually define what your values are and let your values lead you. I'm just going to ask a follow-on question to that. Is there any time that your values have been tested, and how did you go about it? Like for example, you say kindness. Was there a time that it was kind of difficult, but you were like, yeah, because my value is kindness, I'm going to do this. You get what I mean?
Yeah. For me, I feel like my values have evolved as I've got older. You know,
Yeah.
being the oldest child, I would. The feedback will always be, I was the good child, I was the compliant child, I was the child that did what I needed to do.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pressure that comes with being the oldest child, isn't there? You know, you've got to set a responsibility for your younger siblings. So I remember growing up and wanting to make choices in my life, but also being told, you know, this wasn't the right thing to do. So I remember particularly finishing or getting nearing the end of my degree, feeling a bit burnt out and really wanting to take a gap year. And I remember my parents saying, oh, no, you can't take a gap year. And that was something that I didn't do. And looking at my values now, which are about adventure and freedom, actually taking a gap year would absolutely have connected with that. I didn't have that opportunity in my late teens and in my 20s, but actually that's been one of the things that have driven my holidays and what I do and the choices that I make. So growing up, very much trying to figure out what my values were, but always kind of putting them to the side. And if I'm honest, was probably a bit of a people pleaser. So as I got older and I suppose more comfortable and confident in who I am, then it's very much me standing 10 toes down and saying, actually, no. And I've had to make some really difficult choices for me to stand in my values. That's meant saying goodbye to people and saying goodbye to opportunities. But I'm very much of the opinion that my decisions now come from my heart. And if I look back in my younger years, they very much came from my head. They were logical, you know, they were based on reason. I might have sat and done a pros and cons list. There was a very analytical approach to them. Where I am now, I know my values quite intrinsically, which means that what I'm doing isn't always coming from my head, which makes no sense to other people, but it's about what matters to me, and that's about how it comes from the heart. So yeah, I've had to make some difficult decisions. I've had people approach me for work and I've had to say no because it doesn't align with my values. I've had people, you know, give opinions about parenting, and I've had to be quite firm and say, actually, no, this doesn't align with my values either. So there's something quite comforting about being at this age, and I say this age as someone who's probably closer to 50 than I am to 40. It's just being able to stand up confidently and say, this is what I believe in, this is what drives me forwards, and actually being comfortable and okay with the noise that might come from that.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. Just how you said it. I mean, sometimes when you're going with your values, then you're not making decisions from your head. You're making decisions from your heart. And I've once said it that if you have your values and use your values as a decision filter, the decisions you make might not be the best decision to everyone, but they'll be the best decision for you, and you'll be comfortable knowing that I've made that decision based on my values. And you absolutely nailed it. That's one of the reasons why we need to know what our values are.
Yeah.
Uh, Moving on now on the passionate professional series, the question everybody wants to hear. So, what is it that she's passionate about? So, tell us then, Merrisha, what are those things that you are passionate about?
I am passionate about a whole host of things. Thinking about kind of professionally what I do, I'm very much passionate about empowering other people. And, you know, I kind of touched on that already,
Yeah.
but this is the thing that lights me up. And the beauty about the work that I do is that it doesn't feel like work. I'm incredibly passionate about people recognizing their worths, people seeing their strengths, and people having dreams. And I see this on a daily basis, and quite often the people that come to me have never said out loud what they dream about, what they want. You know, they've come from a background where either they didn't think they were able to speak about what they wanted to say, or they've got people around them where, you know, they're a bit of a unicorn, so they can't possibly say out loud what they want to say. And being in coaching, you give people permission to say out loud what they've always wanted to say. And that's the beautiful thing about that. So very passionate about that. I'm also incredibly passionate about giving back and supporting others. And that's not just in the coaching work, but I do a lot of mentoring. And I always have done mentoring, whether it's with staff, whether it's with young people. And thinking back in my 20s, I used to mentor quite a bit children in schools. And even now, 20 odd years later, I'm still mentoring in universities. So I'm really passionate about giving back. And as I said, you know, I'm just passionate about living a life where I don't need to apologize. So that I get to the end of my days and I'm looking back and thinking, yeah, that's what I wanted to do. So those are my passions.
Nice.
What's my passion about? Experiences. And that's not just traveling, but I'm quite partial to spas. So I'm really passionate about just making the most of the time that I've got, because what we all know for sure is that nothing is guaranteed.
I agree with you. Yeah, I got a few things, a few of your passions, empowering others, and you do that through your coaching, giving back and supporting others. You do that also through mentoring. You're passionate about experiences and living a life on your own terms, something that you don't have to apologize. And I totally resonate with the one that you said, experiences. And there was a study that they did, and they're trying to find out what made people happy, and they realize that it's not about what you have. Like a lot of people were accumulating things, cars, houses, but they were not as happy as the people that were actually accumulating experiences. And for experiences, it doesn't cost a lot. It might just be going out to a museum, going on a walk, going out with your children. Those are the things that actually we store in the back of our minds. And when we're old, those are the things that we can look back on. So absolutely, I agree with you on that. And I love the fact that you're empowering others through your coaching business, which we'll talk about in a bit. Yeah, but moving on, tell us about some of the things that some of the achievements that you've gathered over the years that you're proud of. What are some of your biggest or your proudest achievements? I know for many people that means different things to many people, but in your own terms, what does that mean?
So as I sit here, I'm thinking about, my life through the decades. And if you'd asked me, I don't know, in my teens, my 20s, I would have said going to university. I was the first person in my family, so that was a huge achievement. And I suppose coming from the area that I grew up in, that was quite an achievement. My achievements used to be, I suppose, based on my academics and based on my career, my job title, status. That was all what was important in my 20s. But actually, as I look at it now in my late 40s, some of the proudest things are not the media, are not the rooms I've been speaking in, are not the big contracts, but it's things that really matter to me. So an example of that is this year I was featured in the Birmingham Mail, and it wasn't that article that was important to me. It was something that came as a result of this article. And I was invited to a primary school to come and speak to the children. And why I was invited to the school is because the school was based in the area that I grew up in. And it was actually the school that I used to see from my bedroom window as a child. It wasn't the one that I went to, but it was the one I used to see. And this mattered to me because, as I've touched on, it was inner city, Birmingham. And recently I had somebody cite it as being one of the most deprived parts of the city. And so to have this opportunity to go in and speak to children who were just like me, people who didn't necessarily have the best start, children who didn't necessarily have motivation and words of empowerment spoken to them, and children who might have had limiting beliefs about what was possible for them. As I went and spoke to them, I could see I was them. And again, I turned my head and I could see my old bedroom from the classroom. And that was the kind of thing that mattered to me, that I had the opportunity to speak to those children and to potentially change the trajectory of what they were going to do in their lives. So that's one of the big things that stood out for me. And one of the other more powerful things was a program that I deliver. It's a leadership program for new and aspiring leaders. It's called the Momentum Program. And I am just about to deliver my 4th cohort of this program. Why this really matters to me is this was an idea that I had about 4 or 5 years ago. And what I knew to be true was that there were some gaps in how leadership support was being delivered in organisations. And while I was still in employment, I went and met with my HR director at the time, and I gave her some thoughts and some ideas of what I think needed to be different. And I remember her to this day saying, "My goodness, this is amazing. We would absolutely snap this up, and we know other organisations would want this too." And that little idea is a leadership programme that's now about to be delivered for the 4th time. So I'm
Wow.
actually proud of that, because, you know, I could have seen that idea, I could have seen the gaps and just thought this isn't my remit and parked it,
Mm.
but I didn't. And I took myself out of my comfort zone, met with my HR director, and that programme is now transforming lives. So that is a huge achievement for me.
So I'm clapping for both of them and many more achievements for both of them. The first one, I mean, almost brought tears to my eyes. I mean, when you go back to, or when you had the opportunity to go back to where you grew up, and you're able to actually help children that were in the same circumstances or in the same situation that you were when you were growing up. And just like you said, when you looked out of the window, and you could see your old bedroom. I mean, it must have brought back memories to your mind. But yeah, having that opportunity to able to give back, which is one of your values as well. Being able to empower others, I think that's something that I totally think is a massive achievement. And then talking about the Momentum program as well. Yeah, I mean, it's easy. A lot of people create things in their mind but never bring it to reality. But being able to see it through, and also being able to help people through it, I think from that picture that you showed us, I mean, the comments from the Momentum program were so massive. I mean, on the scale of 0 to 5, almost everything was 5, 5, 5, 5. And I saw that one of the things you talked about was difficult conversations. It's something that I still struggle with. I mean, having conversations, sometimes you just want to speak up, or you feel something's not going right, but you don't know how to talk about it. How then do people, I mean, the Momentum program, is it something that you deliver to organizations, or do people just come and apply? Can I just apply to the Momentum program, for example?
So you can apply, and the next cohort that starts is very different to the previous 3. So the previous 3 have been commissioned or have been procured by organisations. So they've identified up to 20 staff who are suitable for the programme. I've then worked with them for 6 months, delivering training on some key topics, as well as group coaching and one-to-one coaching. So you really get to know people quite a lot by the end of this program, because I'm seeing them twice a month for sessions. I'm working with them on a one-to-one basis. They also have access to me in between, and you know, they've come to me for support. So I really get quite invested in it, because I get to know these people. But recognising that, you know, public sector and charities, they're all under the same financial constraints, which is everybody's got savings to make. The pressure is on to do more, but with reduced budgets. So for the first time, I'm widening it out and hoping to get a mixed bunch of people from a variety of organisations, or it might be individuals that see this and think, I need to be on this too. So there's a whole host of topics which are not your typical leadership program. What I know from when I was coming up in management and leadership is that quite often these programs equip you with how to do the job, you know, how to manage your team. But actually, what we know, and particularly since COVID, is the impact on people and on relationships. And so the focus of this is not just about doing, but it's about how to be. So when we're talking about things like emotional intelligence, we're talking about how to have influence and impact. We are talking about how can you build relationships with people above you and people below you, and how can you have these difficult conversations. And what I love about this is that, you know, it's not just theory based.
Mhm.
Coaching, they get scenarios, they're in groups, they get observed, And they then go away and they test it, and we come back and we talk about it, so I can coach them through how potentially it could be even better next time as they start rolling it out. So when they come in, lots of people think that progression is a real barrier for them for all sorts of reasons, whether it's their gender, whether it's they can't apply for roles because they've got feedback they're not great at interviews, whether they've experienced bullying and harassment and their confidence has been knocked. There are all sorts of reasons why people apply for the role or apply for this program. And it's the most beautiful thing to see how they transition through the program and then to see where they're at the end. So yes,
Nice.
people can apply to
Yeah.
go on this individually. They would just need to contact me and I can send some information and we can have a chat.
Cool. And are these sessions delivered virtually or in person? Just out of curiosity.
So to date, they've all been delivered virtually, but I am not averse to delivering it in person if there are enough people to do that.
Oh, nice. Cool. The next question I was going to ask you, well, obviously you can expand on it, but you've already, by talking about the momentum program, I think that's one of the answers. But how is it that, how can young professionals actually prepare themselves for leadership? Because, I mean, in your story, you're saying that you accidentally landed in management role. And for many people, it's kind of similar. They accidentally find themselves in management or leadership positions, things that they're not prepared for. And then you're like, oh, okay, now I've been put in the role. I don't know what to do. But is there something that we can do as young professionals to prepare ourselves for leadership positions?
Yeah, absolutely. And when I talk about accidentally being put in a leadership role, it was accident because it was a group of staff that nobody else seemed to want to manage. And of course, I always like to challenge. And so I remember my manager at the time, who I got on with quite well, he said, there's this group of staff and nobody really wants to manage them. I think you'd be excellent. It might warrant a pay rise. Do you want to do it? I'll put you on a leadership program. I was like, yeah, okay, fine. So quite naively, I went into this, and it's worth saying I was 23 at the time. So I was managing staff who, no exaggeration, were the same age as my mum.
Wow.
So what I know with hindsight is that, first of all, it's about building relationships. It's not necessarily about your qualifications or your skills. These things absolutely matter, but it's about building relationships with people, because that's how you get the know, like, and trust factor. And it's also recognizing that you're dealing with people. You're not dealing with robots. You're not on an assembly line. So it can't be a one-size-fits-all model. It really has to be about how you get into a relationship with somebody else. So what I know now is that when I go in and manage a team, I always start with having one-to-ones with people and trying to understand, tell me about your strengths, tell me about your challenges, tell me about how do you want us to work together. Tell me what doesn't get the best out of you, or how can I get the best out of you? But I also want to know you on a personal level. So this isn't about you, oversharing and telling me what you don't want me to hear, but it's about starting to build those relationships. It's also putting yourself forward and stepping out of your comfort zone, but it is also looking at what support do you need. So I've always found myself in, managing departments or busy departments that I may not know anything about the specialty, but what I will do is say, I want to learn. How can you teach me? How can I learn more? So the beauty of me always being non-clinical, but being able to manage clinical teams, is that I would always sit and observe, and I would always speak to clinical leads. I want to understand, what do you do and how can I learn about this? There is so much information out there nowadays. There is no excuse for people not to learn and develop. For it, you're getting a mentor, and of course I'm going to recommend getting a coach. There is YouTube, there are podcasts, there are still old-fashioned libraries. There are no excuses for people not to learn. There's even ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So it's really being clear, what are your skills deficits? What are the gaps for you? But what do you need to do to learn? And it's also getting feedback. You can't move forwards existing in an echo chamber, thinking that you know it all. You've got to get reasonable feedback. I do say that feedback can sometimes be like a Christmas present, something that you desperately want, or it could be something that's a bit of a waste of time and you'd rather throw it in the bin. So when you think about feedback, it's making sure that you're getting variety of feedbacks from different people, but also making sure that they are trusted sources, that actually this is going to be constructive and going to help you move forwards. And it's not just getting the feedback, but it's about how do you then apply it? What do you do with the feedback? And having a growth mindset that there's always something that you can learn and do better.
Wow, that's like you've gone through the entire toolbook, the toolkit for. I'll just call it leadership 101. If you want to become a leader, Marisha has just given us a lot of points. One is put yourself forward and ask for support. The second one is be open to learn. And I love how you said, yeah, I think I've just noted that you go into my inventory of things to always tell people you don't have excuses not to learn and develop in today's age. You have no excuses not to learn and develop, and also seek feedback and use this feedback to improve yourself. Well, I think the one that stands on top of everything for me, and something I'm going to take forward, is always know that leadership is not about numbers, it's not about stats, it's not about what do they call KPIs. Leadership is about people. It's about the people. So you should learn to develop and build relationships, walk among the crowd, and build quality relationships. And that's how you go from a place of no to a place of light to a place of trust. Thank you so much, Marisha. I think everyone that is listening would absolutely say that they've gone through a coaching session with you. I think we need to pay you for this.
And what I'm going to say to people is, I meet people who are quite often overqualified. They've got so many qualifications because they think they need to just do the next thing to move forwards.
Yeah.
And what we know is that, whilst competence is important, there was some research done at Harvard University that actually that trust factor trumps competence. So it's really, really important that you invest time in building your relationships with people. If you haven't got relationships, if people don't know, like, and trust you, then you're not going to be a great leader. They're just not going to.
Wow. Food for thought. Thank you, Marisha. I can see a question from someone in the audience. I'll ask that in a bit. I think it will be great to ask at the end. The next question I'm going to ask you while I'm compiling the questions is, uh, you talk so smoothly and you make it seem like life is all just a smooth sail. But have you ever gone through a challenging time? And how did you navigate it?
I have been through many challenging times, and I'm pretty sure, I'm not at the point in life where everything is perfect. There will be more challenging times. I've suffered, grief and loss like anybody else. For many years, I had a chronic health concern, which affected every area of my life. We've touched on the fact that I'm a single parent, and that's incredibly hard. And when I think about the challenging times and also how I actually stepped into business in the first place, is that a few weeks before the pandemic, that's when I became a single parent. So my 2020 started off that year navigating single parenthood. And that was a place that I didn't think I was going to be at. I had my daughter quite late in life by medical standards. I was 38. And so I thought this was my situation. And then things changed. And so as I'm just starting to navigate single parenthood, and then we have the pandemic, that for me was an incredibly challenging period of my life. And, I'm fortunate that I didn't lose people close to me, and I know a lot of people did. And everyone will have, their own accounts of how the pandemic affected them. For me, I was working in children's mental health, which was completely affected, as you'll appreciate it, because I worked in the NHS. I was still going to work, not working from home. I was going into the office. But I also had a 2-year-old. And I remember, I think it was the last week of March of 2020, as the news started to break about the pandemic and going into lockdown. And I've got my staff in my office crying, wanting guidance. And I remember closing the door to my office and bursting into tears myself, thinking, I'm not sure how I'm going to do the food shopping and queue for nappies and do the job. So I started that very much in a lot of fear, like everybody else. And I remember thinking, if I got unwell, my family are generally 200 miles away. I haven't got any support around me. And I remember thinking, God forbid, if I collapse in my house, my daughter can't even open the front door. So that was a really tricky period of my life. And what I can say is that that was a blessing in disguise, the pandemic, for me, because so many things changed, and I don't know if I would have set up a business if we hadn't have had the pandemic. So what happened for me was that initially, because my financial situation had changed, I started marketing my coaching, which was the first time I'd ever done that. And of course, the world and everyone was suddenly asking questions about their lives. So that's how I started picking up more coaching initially. And then I was doing that probably 3 or 4 evenings a week. I dropped a day at work, and there was only so much time that you could ignore your heart saying, actually, but this is what is lighting you up. So that moved in that direction. But also, I had time with my child. I lived in Kent. I had to navigate the Blackwall Tunnel every day to get to work. And everybody who knows that area knows, you can get stuck in that 2 hours easily. So it was quite a rat race for me trying to navigate work and parenting. But actually, I was lucky. I was a key worker, so my child was still at nursery. And I was getting back from work super quick, which meant I had all this time in the evenings to plant strawberries and make banana bread like everybody else. And we spent such valuable time walking through the fields and through nature and the forests. And that's something we still do now. We spend an awful lot of time outdoors, and we live on the edge of an area of national beauty. But I had such priceless time with my child that I probably wouldn't have had otherwise. So whilst it started off being one of the most difficult times of my life, it completely transformed my life as well.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. And I think it also beautifully demonstrates what we talked about at the start about resilience,
Mm.
because everyone will go through not just macro trauma, micro traumas, but it's that opportunity. And it's that someone once said that when you look at crisis, how it's written in the Chinese language, it means the same thing as opportunity. And every time problems come, they're actually an invitation for us to actually grow to another level. So you can choose to let the problems make us worse people or better people. But when problems come, during that time, you might feel like, oh, the world is about to crumble, the world is about to end. But you need to know that if you're able to rise above the challenges or the problems, it will make you a better person for it. And just like you said, it helped you to realize what your passion was. It helped you to realize that this is you could make more money from it. It helped you to connect with your daughter, most importantly, and it also helped you to connect with nature and to find out things that made you tick. And that's an invitation for everyone as well. Like when you have challenges, always ask yourself that what's the opportunity here? What's the opportunity here? Because in every challenge, with every adversity, there's a seed of opportunity. Thank you so much, Marisha. Okay, we have 10 minutes to go, and we still have a question from someone from the audience. So I'm just thinking, what else do I want to ask you before before I let you go? Because I'm enjoying this session. I'm just scribbling and writing notes. Okay, I'll ask you this question about your favorite quotes or books.
Um, Favorite books. So you'll probably not be surprised to know that I have always been a lifelong nerd and always had my head in a book. Um, Nowadays it's more audible books, but some of the key books that stood out for me, there's a book called Tuesdays with Morrie, and this was a book that I read many, many years ago. And this book was life lessons by somebody who was battling a terminal illness. And the man who was unwell, would meet with one of his students every Tuesday. And so that's what it was called, Tuesdays with Morrie. And
Mm.
the book was written by the students, the life lessons that he learned from this person in his last days. So it was all about the things that really resonate with me, connectivity, relationships, forgiveness, kindness, passion. Yeah, these things all stayed with me. And it's interesting because I say, I don't always remember books and titles, but that book always stayed with me. In terms of favorite quotes, a quote from Wayne Dyer: when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. For me, that
Mm.
is just a constant reminder. It's all about perspective. And I'm constantly checking in with myself, and life and people. Which lens am I viewing this from? Is there a different way of looking at this? Can I reframe this? And is it really that bad? And that's just something that I'm constantly asking myself. Can I change the way I look at this?
Mm. Yeah, I think I heard that quote as well from Wendy, and I actually just wrote it down because and it's actually true. I mean, when you change the way you look at things, the things you begin to look at change. A lot of us just look like with a narrow mindset. We don't actually look from another perspective. But when you look from another perspective, or from someone else's perspective, you might start seeing that, oh, this is not all that there is, and that's why we should not be quick to judge. I think that's one of the ways that that quote has helped me, and then it's helped me also generally just in looking at what are the things I'm looking at. Is it that I'm just looking at the wrong things just because I'm being too narrow minded, and that's helped me to start thinking outside the box. So that's a quote that I apply to my own life as well. Tuesdays with Maury. I mean, I've never heard about the book, but I think it's something that I'll definitely want to read. I always like memoirs about people that are about to die, and it helps us to actually learn. Okay, because sometimes we don't, just like we're talking about perspective, we don't think from the perspective of, oh, what if I'm about to die tomorrow? How would I do things differently? There's a book I read, I think it's Chasing Daylight, and it's kind of similar. This was about the birth of KPMG, that had been given a terminal diagnosis of brain cancer. And it was like, you know what? I've been chasing status, I've been chasing my career, I've been chasing all of this, but now every day I'm chasing daylight. I just want to see another daylight. But every day that I'm living, I'm going to make it count for my family. I'm going to make it count for my friends, and it just helps us to bring things into perspective. So one I'm definitely going to check out Tuesdays with Maury. And just like you, I do Audible as well. So I'm just going to download it on Audible and listen to it.
Well, it's a
Okay.
really easy read, which is also something else that I like. So it's a
Yeah.
very, very simple read. Anybody can read it and not be put off by the size of the book.
Yeah, I can imagine. The book I'm currently listening to, I don't know if you've read it. It's called Can't Hurt Me, by David Goggins. I like it, but I mean, it's about 17 hours long, and I'm still working through it. But yeah, I like easy reads as well. Things
I
like, sorry, yeah, say something. Yeah, saying
No, I was going
something.
to say, I listen to a lot of his talks. He's very inspirational, isn't he?
Yeah, and it's kind of the motivation for the question I've asked, like resilience, because it's a very resilient person. I can't imagine going through all that he's gone through and still keep standing. But yeah, okay. Yeah, so I'm going to ask the question from because we have just 5 minutes to go. So the question is from Real Divad, and it says, "How do you tell an employee that they are out of line?" I guess that would be from the perspective of a leader, or maybe even not a leader, maybe someone who's at the same level as you, well, the person is out of line. I mean, I think that means not performing up to standards. But how do you tell them um, without affecting that relationship that you have with them?
So, first of all, because you said without affecting that relationship, sometimes you might affect the relationship, and I'll tell you why. Because you
Mm-hmm.
can't control how that other person's going to react. The only thing you can control in that situation is yourself. So, what that person decides to do as a result of this, you can't control, and that might affect the relationship. But what I would say is that you deal with it there and then. Don't leave it festering, and keep it factual, but also be kind. So people often talk about the poo sandwich, They say give something nice, then give the meaty bit in the middle, and then fluff it up at the end with something nice. And I don't think that's always helpful or relevant.
Mm-hmm.
And so you basically have to call a spade, which means you talk about the situation, you talk about the behavior, and you talk about the impact of what's just happened. So it's very simple framework: SBI, situation, behavior, and the impact. Take the feelings and the emotions out of it, because actually you might be really fed up with that person. You might want to be quite unprofessional in what you're saying, but actually
Yeah.
that's not what we're doing at work. We're not going to go down that route. Stick to the situation, what they've done, or what's
Yeah.
happened, the behavior, and the impact. And the impact might be on the team, it might be on the organization, it might be on the reputation, but stick to the facts.
I like that framework. Situation, behavior, and impact. I think is one that I'm going to take forward as well. Because, yeah, just like you said, I think I used to use the sandwich approach. Oh, well, you did this well. And then somewhere in between, you just say, oh, you could have done this better. But overall, I think you're doing really well. But yeah, I think we don't think about, yeah, the impact that it's had. Sometimes we don't really let them know how their behavior was out of what was expected or out of proportion to what was expected. So I like that SPI framework.
What I
Okay.
also, I also just
Sorry.
add,
Yeah, Karen.
can I also just add, make
Sure.
sure that you are keeping notes of your discussions. So I always say
Mhm.
to people, you do regular one-to-ones with people and you keep one-to-one notes, because if you then need to go down another route in the future, you've got your notes for this. Make sure you are being kind, but also make sure that you are keeping factual evidence. So when you need to have conversations, this is all about fact. It's not fluffy and woolly. You've got facts.
Yeah, I totally agree. 100% with that. 2 minutes to go, and I think I'm going to sneak in one question of mine I've kept just in case we don't get so many questions from the audience. And this is a question I think is personal for me. And although I've termed it, how can organizations make employees feel more valued? Or in the same vein, how can you make even if you're not the organization, how can you make your co-workers, how can you make people feel more valued at work?
So I will go back to where I started, which was about relationships. It's
Mm,
about taking the time to get to know who you work for, taking the time to understand, how do you want to be communicated with, um, what works and what doesn't, but also taking the time to really get to know people. Um, and, wherever I've worked, I like to do away days, which are not just focused on the task, but
mhm.
focused on getting to know people. And I've done the most weird and random away days in the world, but it's about getting to know people in a different context, and it's about having fun. It's also about giving people feedback. We talk about when things haven't gone right, sorry, but how about we tell people when they've done a good job? Some people work in organizations where, they don't get bonuses, they don't get any golden handshakes or any rewards,
Mhm.
but they just want to know that they've done a good job and that they're valued and appreciated. So we all get really busy, it's really easy to focus on the end results. but just take the time to get to know people and to make them feel valued.
Wow. I think this is a good place to actually drop the mic. You've done it. I mean, you've said that, I think, in the best possible way ever. Building relationships. I've seen how it changes the dynamics at work, and giving feedback. And again, with that, I've seen how it changes dynamics at work. Yeah, I totally and 100% agree with that. Just before we go, Marisha, is there any way that people can connect with you?
Yeah, so my website is on my name title there, but it's merishagordoncoaching.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. So by all means, just drop me a message, connect with me, and I will obviously reply. Those are probably the best places to find me, LinkedIn or via my website.
Thank you so much, Marisha. It's been lovely having you on the Passionate Professional series. I'm sure, I mean, I've learned a lot, I've scribbled a lot, I'm going to listen to this a lot and draw things from it. And I'm sure that people that are watching live and those that are going to play the replay as well will say the same. Thank you for giving us, I'll say, a free coaching session and also sharing your life's experiences with us. I think one of the main things that I picked from today's talk is that we should have values, and our values should be the compasses that drive us forward in life. And probably the last thing that you said, and which is probably the thing I'm going to take away, is it should always be about people. Don't forget that wherever you do, wherever you work, wherever industry you work, it's always about the people, and you should learn to build relationships with people. That's the most important thing. And yeah, with that, we've come to the end of another episode. So we'll meet again on the next episode. As I always like to say, keep living with passion and purpose. It's been nice having a chat with you all today. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your week. Bye, Marisha.
Thank you very much for having me, Tunde.
Take care.